I think it can be really fruitful to go back and look at the Republican debates from the 2016 primary and look at the things Trump was saying, because essentially in that primary, Trump was the anti-establishment candidate on the right. He was the anti-establishment Republican that the establishment Republicans and most the elites, even in the media, didn't want winning. And then Bernie Sanders was that for the left. Obviously, Bernie Sanders is much more dangerous to the establishment than Trump, because Trump's still a businessman and a capitalist and also a bumbling idiot, whereas Bernie actually had a plan for redistributing wealth and other things like that. But Trump was able to win, and Bernie wasn't able to win. So it's interesting to go back and look at the things Trump said. And despite what CNN and MSNBC will tell you, Trump's entire voting base was not a bunch of racist KKK members, right? He was getting the support of the KKK. His racist rhetoric was attracting a lot of people, but he also had a lot of anti-war and populist rhetoric that really won people over. He didn't follow through on any of it, but he was saying it, and that got him the win in 2016. And of course, then he didn't win in 2020. So we can talk about maybe people saw through it after 4 years of governance under Trump. They didn't feel any substantial change, which could be why he lost. But let's watch this this clip here where Trump is calling out Jeb Bush's brother George Bush on stage for the Iraq War, and how the audience reacts to it and how the media reacts to it.
On Monday, George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
Okay, all right. Governor Bush, when a member on the stage's brother gets attacked,
I got
brother
about
gets
5
to
or
respond.
6. Do I get to do it 5 or 6 times, or just
being
once
nice.
responding to that?
The clips of Trump running through the establishment Republicans in the 2016 primaries are crazy to me. There's another clip that I'll play another time where people are cheering for Jeb Bush or they're booing Trump, and Trump goes, those people right there who are booing me, those are his donors. But people at home, they like what I'm saying right now. And obviously he was right. He won. I mean, he dominated the Republican primary with his anti-establishment rhetoric. And I think that's something that we can learn from, of course, you know. Yeah, if you don't want to learn from the guy who was able to be an anti-establishment candidate and win, I mean, you're crazy. Of course we should learn from that, you know. Yeah, so he just didn't care that people were booing him, right? You hear people boo him when he calls the Iraq War a mistake. They booed him when he said there were never WMDs. That's just a fact. It's a fact that Bush lied about the WMDs, and the audience there, and you know, tickets for these things are like over $1,000. So it's only wealthy, politically connected people who are there like, boo, boo. The Iraq War has something like a 30% approval rating now, maybe even less, you know, and the vast majority of the country thinks our troops should come home, which is what Trump was pitching for there, which has probably gained him a lot of support in the actual election. But the establishments there are booing him, you know, and what did Bernie do every time he faced the full brunt of the establishment, you know? The example I think of is when Joe Rogan endorsed him, and Bernie was like, look, Joe Rogan endorsed us. And the media just came after him. Look at what Joe Rogan said in his past. Who cares if it's the largest podcast in America endorsing you? And Joe Rogan speaks clearly for tons and tons of Americans, and he's endorsing you, saying he wants you to be the president of the United States. And then Bernie, I can't remember exactly what he did. He said, I no longer accept the endorsement. That's what it was. He didn't accept the endorsement because the fake woke establishment who are murdering people overseas on a daily basis and allowing millions of people to die of starvation and live in the streets said Joe Rogan was too mean and said too many things in his past for Bernie to accept his endorsement. Completely ridiculous. And you see what Trump does there. He doesn't care what the political establishment says. He speaks to what he knows his base is. Now, he was lying to them. We're still in the Iraq War. He didn't do anything he said. But if we as socialists have an actual plan for ending the wars and making people's lives better. So we need to understand that the Democratic Party is not our friend. And it might be time to work, around the Democratic Party rather than within it. And understand these Democratic Party elites function the same as the Republican Party elites. When you say stuff like the Iraq War was a mistake and they lied us into it by torturing people at Abu Ghraib, they'll go, boo, you're so offensive for saying that. But people at home go, that's true. And people at home, people like you and me, know folks who have been sent to Syria and Iraq and the Middle East and who have come back with PTSD and haven't been taken care of by our government. So we want, a president who's saying they're going to end these senseless, needless wars, which is part of the reason Trump won. And establishment media like CNN and MSNBC will do everything they can to convince you that every single one of Trump's supporters is this horrible racist. But in 2016, there were a lot of people who voted for him because he said he was going to end the horrific trade deals implemented by Bill Clinton and bring people's jobs back. And he said he was going to bring all the troops back and end the wars. He lied. He didn't do any of it because he's a slimy capitalist. But his campaign techniques are something to learn from, right? Quit genuflecting to the establishment. Speak to the masses. And the establishment was so offended by Trump, they just gave him free airtime nonstop. Every time he said something offensive, the CNN would be like, oh, look at what Trump said now. When will it end? And then he got so much free airtime from that, he won. I want to see a Democrat do that. I want to see Bernie Sanders' message with the balls of Trump. Right? I think that was a tweet that went on during the Bernie campaign. And I agree with it. And, you got to reach the masses. Is that not what every single work of theory says, whether it's Lenin or Mao or Engels or Marx or whoever you're reading? They say you have to reach the masses, the people who work. And that is kind of what Trump did, in a way. 50% of the country doesn't vote, right? So you need to reach those people too, as well as win the working people who voted for Trump. And I'm not saying, appeal to the actually racist part of Trump's base, right? The QAnon people or anti-Semitic people or members of the Ku Klux Klan. We don't want them, right? We want them out of society. But we do want his base of industrial workers who voted for him, or John Deere employees, right? Those are the kind of people we want to win to socialism because we have a legitimate plan to make their lives better. We have a legitimate plan to nationalize the military-industrial complex companies and fossil fuel industry who have been pushing for foreign interventions and bring all the troops home and reinvest all that money in American jobs. Because that is what would be best for American working people. So that's what we have to sell. We have to get to the masses and say that. And when the establishment tells us we're being racist for talking about class, which is literally something I've seen them say, when you talk about poverty and the working class, that's being racist because you're ignoring people of color. People of color are in the working class, dang it. You're racist if you think it's if you think people of color aren't in the working class, the only way to advance the plight of people of color is to advance the plight of the working class, right? That's what intersectionality is. But they're going to call you racist. They're going to call you a piece of crap for accepting Joe Rogan's endorsement. And all we got to do is just keep leading with tolerance, but reaching the masses too. You know, nope, these are lies. I support trans people. I support the entire LGBTQ plus community. I support women's rights. I support people of color, ending the racist prison industrial complex. But I also support class struggle. I also support worker ownership. Workers should own industry. Workers should own the banks. And workers should own the major sectors of economic power, because right now, we have a few private capitalists who control all the major sectors of economic power, and they are destroying the planet, leaving us in these endless wars. And Trump came to power saying he was going to do something about it, and then he continued all of it, and now we have another establishment goon, Joe Biden. But it's time to reach the masses with something new, with socialism. All right, everyone, thanks for listening to my rant. Hope you're having a great day. Solidarity.